The Lantern Keeper. The old village of Daraba lay hidden between mountains and rivers, a place where time moved slowly and stories lived longer than the people who told them. Among its cobbled streets and wooden houses, there was one figure everyone knew: Grandpa Rafik, the Lantern Keeper. For 50 years, Rafik had lit the great lantern that stood on the cliff, overlooking the river bend. It wasn't just any lantern. Legend said it had saved countless lives of fishermen, travelers, and lost children in the dark. The light could be seen for miles, guiding people home. No one knew who first built it. Some whispered it was a gift from angels. Others believed it was made by a wandering blacksmith who owed the village his life. But for as long as anyone could remember, Grandpa Rafik had been its guardian. The promise. Rafik's love for the lantern began as a boy. One winter night, when he was only 12, he had wandered too far along the riverbank. The fog was thick, and the freezing water roared below. Just when he thought he'd never find his way, a warm golden light cut through the mist. Following it, he stumbled into the safety of the village square. His father told him, "That light will always guide you home, as long as someone tends to it." Years later, when the old keeper passed away, Rafik took the vow. "Every night, without fail, I will light the lantern until my last breath." The change. For decades, Rafik kept his promise. Rain, snow, or sickness, he climbed the narrow cliffside stairs, carrying oil, trimming the wick, and lighting the flame. People trusted that no matter how dark the night, the lantern would shine. But time has a way of changing things. The younger generation began moving to cities. Boats became motorized, roads were lit with electric lamps. The lantern is just an old story, some said. We don't need it anymore. One summer, the village council decided to shut it down to save money. When Rafik heard the news, his hands trembled. "You can't put out that light," he argued. "It's not just about guiding boats. It's about hope. If you put it out, you put out part of our soul." But the council didn't listen. They told him to rest, that his job was over. The night of the storm. 2 weeks later, the sky turned black with thunderclouds. A violent storm swept across the river, stronger than any in decades. Winds howled like wolves, and rain came down in sheets. That night, Rafik couldn't sleep. He looked toward the cliff. The lantern stood cold and dark. Something inside him refused to accept it. Grabbing his oil can and matches, he stepped into the storm. The climb was brutal. The stairs were slick. The wind nearly knocked him off the cliff more than once. His knees ached, but he pressed on, remembering the words from his childhood. "That light will always guide you home." When he reached the top, he lit the lantern. The flame roared to life, fighting the wind but refusing to die. Golden light cut through the rain, spilling across the river. The rescue. Far down the river, a small fishing boat was struggling against the current. Inside were 3 men, 2 young fishermen and a boy barely 12. The motor had failed, and they were drifting toward the deadly rocks. The boy spotted the light first. "There, look!" he cried. The fishermen, exhausted and nearly hopeless, steered toward it with their last bit of strength. The light guided them to a calmer stretch of shore, where villagers rushed to pull them in. When they staggered onto land, drenched and shaking, one of them whispered, "If it wasn't for that light, we'd be dead." The village awakens. The next morning, everyone heard what had happened. They saw Grandpa Rafik standing by the lantern, soaked to the bone but smiling faintly. His hands were blistered from holding the rope that kept the lantern, door from slamming shut in the wind. The council members, ashamed, admitted their mistake. "The lantern stays," they announced. And from that day on, it was no longer just Rafik's duty. The villagers took turns climbing the cliff, making sure the light never went out. Rafik, now older and slower, would still make the climb sometimes, but more often he stood at the bottom, looking up with pride. The lantern's glow was no longer just his promise. It was the village's. The final night. Years passed, and Rafik's hair turned as white as winter snow. One autumn evening, he felt the weight of his years pressing down. He knew his time was near. That night, he made the climb one last time. The steps felt longer than ever, but the air was clear, and the stars hung like silver lanterns in the sky. He lit the flame and stood beside it, gazing over the sleeping village. When the dawn came, villagers found him sitting peacefully at the lantern's base. Eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. The flame was still burning. They buried him on the cliff, where the lantern's light would always touch his grave. And every evening, when someone climbs the stairs to light the flame, they whisper his name. For Grandpa Rafiq, the lantern keeper. Moral. Sometimes the world forgets the old ways. But there are lights, promises, values, and acts of kindness, and that should never be allowed to fade. One person's dedication can keep hope alive for generations.